In this movie, we're going to look at model lines. Now, model lines can be used for a variety of things, and they are really a very simple object. They are actually a two-dimensional object, but as their name implies, they are considered part of the model. So even though it's two-dimensional line work, it's going to show in any 3D view because Revit thinks of it as part of the model. So imagine that you're actually painting lines on the wall, and you have a pretty good idea of what a model line is intended for. The example I'm going to show you is using a model line instead of actually modeling three-dimensional geometry. In the movie where we looked at sweeps and reveals, we saw that a reveal could carve away from the form of a wall. And it may be tempting to use reveals for smaller scale details, things like control joints and very small indentations in the wall. And while it seems like a pretty good idea at the time, on a small project, you might be able to get away with it, but in a larger project, the overhead that you start to introduce to your model can really become a detriment because every time you create that three-dimensional form in your model, it's actually increasing the overall size of the model and therefore having an impact on the overall performance. Furthermore, when it comes time to print something like that, let's say I made a really small reveal that was only about a half an inch in size. At an 1/8 inch scale or even a 1/4 inch scale drawing, those two edges of the reveal are going to be so small and so close together that they're going to just bleed together and appear like one big fat line. And so you probably wouldn't be satisfied with the graphics either. So for those reasons, in situations like control joints and other kinds of small scale details, you might want to consider using a model line instead. And that's what we're going to do here in this movie. So I'm in a file called model lines. And if I zoom in slightly, you can see that this is just a brick wall. Now, the first thing I want to address is you can see over here that the brick pattern just sort of starts randomly. So I can fix that easily enough with the align command, and I'm just going to pick the edge of the wall here and then highlight any line on the pattern, and that will shift the entire brick pattern. So that will help me get my control joints placed a little bit more precisely. So that shifts my brick pattern. Now, you can use the same technique to start shifting the doors and windows if you want to get them to all fall in a brick dimension. I'll leave that up to you. I'm going to go to the Architecture tab and look for the model line tool right here. And when I click on it, the first thing that Revit will ask me is for a work plane. Because I'm working in a non-planned view, it can't assume which plane I want to draw on. So it's asking me, where do you want to draw these two-dimensional, basically, model lines? So I'm going to use the pick a plane option that it's offering me here. Click OK, and I can just pick anywhere on the face of this wall. Now, over here, we get our standard draw toolbox. You can draw model lines in any shape you want. In addition to that, you can assign a line style. So you can make these dashed lines or hidden lines or really thin lines. Now, this default one, just called lines, is actually going to show up in green. So I'm going to go with that so that these become really obvious, and you can change the line style later if you want to. I want to check all my other settings here. I actually don't want chain in this case, so I'm going to turn that off. And I don't want an offset. And what I'll do is just find one of my brick pattern lines here and click and click. And it's just as simple as that. Take this temporary dimension, start dragging it, press the tab key to highlight the outside face. That gives me the dimension right here. And then maybe I want these control joints every 20 feet. So I can put in 20 feet. That hit the window, so let's go with 18 feet. Now I can just copy it, pick my start point, go another 18 feet, and I could keep going down the face of the building. Now, as I said, I'm going to leave these with the green line style right now, but you can simply select them later and change the line style if you have a different style. Perhaps you might even create a line style called control joints. But what I want to show you is if you switch to another view, those lines still display. So that's the advantage of using a model line, is that it's still considered part of your 3D model. However, if we zoom in nice and close, it's really just a line painted on the surface of the wall. It didn't actually change the structure of the wall in any way. And so it tends to be a little bit lighter on the overhead department than if you actually use a reveal or something.